It's Thursday, February 19th, 2009, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers. Welcome to the podcast. We've got some updates on some of the bills we've been following here with regard to marijuana law reform in the United States of America. First of all, Texas has a House Bill 164, a medical marijuana bill that's making progress. And Minnesota House File 292, another medical marijuana bill, made it out of its committee. And in Washington State, Senate Bill 5615, this is a bill for decriminalization of marijuana. That's made it out of committee. And coming up on today's stash, I'm going to be playing for you some incredible audio from the committee hearing on Washington State Senate Bill 5615. It's an amazing discussion from these legislators and gives you kind of an idea what it's like to sit through these hearings, although it's not often you get one as good as this one. Also wanted to update you on the University of Georgia. They had a press conference there today with the University of Georgia NORML and SAFER, Mason Divert's organization that promotes the choice of marijuana over alcohol. And the protest was there to signify how the University of Georgia had come down on the NORML students for making a T-shirt that featured the Georgia Bulldog and the Arch with marijuana. And yet the University of Georgia has no problem with putting their logos all over flasks and shot glasses and other things designed to promote drinking. So we'll see if we can get Mason on the show later on next week to tell us a little bit about that. But a great idea for a protest out there. If you want to help to contribute to this cause, just check out the blog at stash.norml.org. Check out the graphics there, and you can click to support the University of Georgia NORML in their campaign to make the safer choice to use marijuana instead of alcohol. And one little bit of flotsam that floated up here from the shores of cyberspace came to us all the way from Switzerland. That's right, Switzerland. The headline is Kiffer würden Kellogg's kaufen and has to do with our boycottkellogg's.net. They say, viele Cannabis-Liebhaber sind denn auch gar nicht erfreut über ihre Missachtung als Zielgruppe und haben zum Boykott von Kellogg's Produkten aufgerufen. Die amerikanische Marijuana-Lobby NORML hat auf boycottkellogg's.net eine Liste aller Kellogg's Produkte und mehrere Kontaktmöglichkeiten veröffentlicht, der Müsli-Konzern mal so richtig die Mehrheitsmeinung zu sagen. So wow, the stash made headlines in Switzerland auf Deutsch. My one semester of high school German now feels like it wasn't such a waste after all. Maybe now they'll take seriously my request for an army knife that has a retractable poker and a hidden bowl. All right, coming up on today's Daily Audio Stash, we've got some fantastic news that we're breaking in our hemp headlines regarding a Zogby poll on legalization here in America. Also, a look at the Whizzinator sentencing an 80-year-old woman busted for dealing. Plus, a stupid stoner story. And in our report from Southern California, Terry Joyce brings to us a man who's involved in medical marijuana collectives down there in Southern California. Redbeard joins us on the stash today. And in our Daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, some Dr. Hook for an old jammin' cat like myself. Hey, if we're going to go old school, somebody grab me a Bic pen and a big old Granny Smith apple. It's time for your Normal Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as in multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our normal daily audio stash, Hemp Headlines. Zogby poll. Nearly 6 in 10 on West Coast favor marijuana legalization. San Francisco, California. A majority of West Coast voters support regulating the sale of marijuana in a manner similar to alcohol, according to a national poll of 1,053 likely voters by Zogby International and commissioned by California NORML and Oaksterdam University. 58% of respondents residing on the West Coast agree that cannabis should be, quote, taxed and legally regulated like alcohol and cigarettes, end quote. Only 36% of West Coast respondents oppose regulating the sale of marijuana for adults. Nationally, support for taxing and regulating cannabis stands at 44%. Among likely voters on the East Coast, 48% endorse legalizing marijuana. Respondent support fell to approximately 37% in the southern and central regions of the United States. Earlier this month, a national CBS New York Times poll reported that 41% of Americans support legalizing marijuana, up from just 27% in 1979. Responding to the latest Zogby poll, NORML Executive Director Alan St. Pierre said, quote, public support for replacing the illicit marijuana market with a legally regulated, controlled market similar to alcohol, complete with age restrictions and quality controls, continues to grow and appears to have achieved majority support on the West Coast, where many voters are already familiar with the state-licensed use and, in some cases, sale of medical cannabis, end quote. He added, quote, as voters and legislators continue to look for alternative ways to raise tax revenue for public services and reduce law enforcement costs in this troubled economy, we expect the public support for taxing and regulating cannabis to continue to grow, not just on the West Coast, but nationwide, end quote. Nationally, younger voters age 18 to 29 are most likely, 55%, to support regulating pot. Older voters age 50 to 64 are nearly evenly divided at 48% in their support for legalization. The poll found that a majority of registered Democrat voters, 53%, back taxing cannabis versus only 32% of Republicans. For more information, please contact Alan St. Pierre, NORML Executive Director, at 202-483-5500 or Dale Guringer, California NORML Coordinator, at 415-563-5858. This is an amazing poll, and the one thing that I would add to this is when they break down the regions of the country, they specify that 58% of the people in the West. Now, I'm still trying to get from Zogby what they consider the West, but I think that's more than just the West Coast of California, Oregon, and Washington. If we're including Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, if they're included in this 58%, then we're talking about some real big support on the West Coast. I'd figure that the big population numbers of the West Coast cities in California, Oregon, and Washington would skew the results a little bit. But still, if we're counting all the western states, I bet the support on the West Coast is around two-thirds support, somewhere around 66%. 80-year-old woman, medical marijuana patient on fixed income, busted for dealing. An 80-year-old woman caught with half a pound of marijuana, digital scales, and a wad of cash pleaded guilty Wednesday. On September 17th, narcotics agents searching Ms. Wilsey's South Augusta home found dozens of plastic bags of marijuana, said Assistant District Attorney John Markwalter. Ms. Wilsey admitted selling marijuana, Mr. Markwalter said. She led officers to the marijuana, scales, and $3,825. Defense attorney Tanya Jeffords told the judge that Ms. Wilsey had suffered headaches for years without getting relief from prescription medication. About a year ago, someone suggested she try marijuana, Ms. Jeffords said. It worked without the side effects of prescription drugs, and the selling evolved gradually, Ms. Jeffords said. The widow's only income is from Social Security and a small pension. Judge Annis said he could sympathize with someone using marijuana for medical reasons, but there was no excuse for dealing it. Ms. Wilsey apologized and promised never to enter a courtroom again. Judge Annis sentenced Ms. Wilsey to 5 years probation for possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. In lieu of a fine, he ordered her to perform 230 hours of community service. Well, Ms. Wilsey, if you work full-time for about a month and a half, you can work off that community service. Should be no problem for an 80-year-old widow on Social Security. And if you make it to age 85, you won't even be on probation anymore, you dangerous criminal drug dealer, you. What I want to know is, to whom was she selling the marijuana? How do you end up finding a guy who turns out to be an 80-year-old woman? I'm guessing she was probably selling to other people well into their adulthood as well, who may also have been using marijuana for medicinal purposes. I think by the time you reach a certain age, all marijuana use is medicinal. Just judging by the frequency of the over-the-counter analgesic, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant medications advertised to senior citizens on TV every day, it looks like old age itself is a condition treatable by marijuana. Whizzinator makers to be sentenced Friday faced 8 years, $500,000 in fines. The owners of a California company that sold products to help people cheat on drug tests recently pleaded guilty in federal court in Pittsburgh to charges of conspiracy to sell drug paraphernalia. The federal charges claim that the owners of Puck Technology of Signal Hill, California, defrauded the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which is tasked with overseeing federal workplace drug testing programs. Puck Technology was accused of using the internet to sell products designed to cheat federally mandated drug tests. The company manufactured the Whizzinator, a male prosthetic urinating device, and another product, Number One, a urinating device made for both men and women, to customers in Pennsylvania. For use with these products, the company also sold synthetic urine intended to be passed off as a test taker's real urine. Federal prosecutors brought the charges after ordering one of each product and having them shipped to Pennsylvania. Sentencing is scheduled for February 20th, 2009. Each of the two men faces a maximum total sentence of 8 years in prison, a fine of $500,000, or both. That was the infamous Mary Beth Buchanan in Pennsylvania, the woman who took down Tommy Chong for selling bongs. She's also been a fierce anti-porn crusader as well, having gone so far as to prosecute a woman for writing naughty stories. No pictures, just words. So, it seems only natural that her two favorite vices should come together in a case involving dildos used to beat drug metabolite tests. Of course, this prosecution will have as much effect on the use of smuggled clean pee and fake penises to beat workplace drug metabolite tests as much as Operation Pipe Dreams affected the nationwide use of bongs to smoke marijuana.
Stupid Stoner Stories.
As a public service, NORML reminds you that smoking marijuana will not make one stupid. However, some stupid people do smoke marijuana. Don't be one of those stoners that make the rest of us look bad. Learn your lesson from today's Stupid Stoner Story. Man finds 35 pounds of marijuana in car's gas tank.
Sandy, Utah. A man who brought his newly bought car in to see why the gas gauge always read half full got quite a surprise. A stash of marijuana hidden inside. A mechanic in Sandy who took a look at the gas tank discovered about 35 pounds of pot, which Sandy police say is worth about $35,000. The packages of drugs were wrapped in plastic and could have been in the tank for several months. The Nissan Armada had several different owners and was once a rental car. Police are trying to figure out who stashed the drugs in the tank. Police say the current owner is not a suspect.
So, is this how they come up with those diesel strains I see in High Times? I'm wondering how the 35 pounds of pot were wrapped, and if they were wrapped individually, I'm wondering if there isn't a very mellow, happy mechanic in Utah right now.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Will. I don't work at a used record store. I don't own an iguana, although I'm sure they make great pets. I don't have dreadlocks or play the acoustic guitar. I can remember quite well, thank you, and no, I don't constantly have the munchies. When 420 comes around, I've still got 40 minutes of work left. I've never hit a girl on a bike with my car or shot my friend with a shotgun. I've never had to apologize for letting a girl I was watching drown in a pool while I was getting high because, duh, I wouldn't be getting high if I was around children. I'm a regular guy who works regular jobs, just like the majority of all Americans who use marijuana occasionally and responsibly. My name is Will, and I'm normal.
Weed.
That's Hooey Valley, hooey-ha.
Weed.
Where any office boy or young mechanic.
Now it's time for a report from the epicenter of American cannabis culture with our Southern California correspondent. You know her from ComedyNation.com and her appearance as a finalist on Season 1 of NBC's Last Comic Standing. It's our friend, cannabis comedian and marijuana activist, the lovely and talented Terry Joyce.
Oh, I'm just, having a cup of coffee. There's a lot happening with the medical marijuana movement down here.
Oh, yeah.
There's always something new happening.
Isn't there another protest coming up, I think, sometime soon?
Yeah, I believe there is. I actually spoke with DeJay this morning. She was having a conference call with the House Judiciary in Washington.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So she's really on the forefront there, trying to change our laws.
Mm. Well, I also was wanting to deliver the good news to you. We broke this on the stash today, but this Zogby poll that just came out, and the question was asked, should marijuana be taxed and legally regulated like alcohol and cigarettes to help raise money for public services and to reduce law enforcement costs? Now, the bad news is nationwide, you take a look at the whole country, and only 44% of the people said that was a good idea. 52%, a majority, still don't think that marijuana should be legal. But when we look at the East, the region of the East came down to just about an even split, 48% yes and 49% no. But out here in the West, Terry, 58% of the people think that we ought to tax and regulate marijuana like alcohol. What do you think about those numbers?
I think it's accurate. I think it's great. I dream of the day that I go to 7-Eleven and I can buy a box of Purple Kush. I visualize it. I believe that is really our future.
Yeah. Well, when I look at this number, the thing that gets to me is in the Zogby poll, they say the West. They don't really specify what states are in the West, but of course I'm going to count the West Coast, Oregon, Washington, California, where everybody knows that marijuana is pretty popular and accepted. But if the West is also including like Nevada, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, that's a big number at 58%. I would think that the West Coast would even be bigger than that.
Yeah, I would have expected a little bit that it would be bigger than that on the West Coast. Maybe, of course, like when it's probably the mixture of all of it, which comes out to 58%. But I bet there's a higher, more people are for it in California.
Oh, certainly.
There's a really high number on that.
Well, it's because, we've seen the medical marijuana come about through Prop 215 in 1996. The law is pretty loosely written, so now in California, people have gotten used to these hundreds of dispensaries and all these people that are using medical marijuana, and the sky didn't fall. Everything's fine. There's no problems with the dispensaries. In fact, a lot of times the dispensaries help the neighborhoods and the people that they serve. And that's kind of where I wanted to bring in our guest here. And I'll let you take care of that, Terry. But again, we're talking to people who are involved with this medical marijuana movement in California. And Terry's brought us another fabulous guest for that purpose.
Yes, I do. I have a fabulous guest. His name is Redbeard, and he actually is a writer. He has a column in California Chronicles XXX, which is a magazine that Jeffrey Peterson, that I did the Dope Show with, and his brother have started here. And he also used to work in a former director, producer in the adult film entertainment business or industry, and he also is involved and works with marijuana with a collective called Clover Collective. I'd like to introduce Redbeard.
Hey, Redbeard, how you doing?
It's really nice. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell our listeners a little bit about how you got involved with medical marijuana in California and what you're up to now.
Well, I got involved in medical marijuana personally. I was taking some medication for depression, and I found that when I changed over to marijuana, I didn't have nearly the side effects that I did when I was taking, for instance, the benzodiazepines and the tricyclic antidepressants. I found that I was stoned on those. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I felt stoned on those kind of meds.
Yeah, I've heard people refer to it as a pharmaceutical fog that you end up being in.
It's horrible, and so I switched over then, and I've been a medical marijuana. Hey, I've been a musician, most of my life, playing Vegas, so there was a little pot around, if you will, and I partake then as well. But when I got out here and I found out there was more of a medicinal property that really, really helped me, it opened my eyes. I said, you know what? We have to take a stand. We really need to get involved, and we really need to make a difference for people that need this drug.
Now, what's going on with this Clover Collective? Tell me about the collective and how this new guidelines by the Attorney General are leading the people who are working in the industry to reorganize and set new policy.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say that we really support the way that the legislation is beginning to set things up and regulating things a little better. And what we've done is we've made it a collective. And what I mean by that is we're managed by our members. Our members come in and we have an initiative, and our first initiative is to get lower prices. So we came up with a plan, and the plan was we needed to have as many in-house growers as we could. We quickly realized that we didn't have the room to grow enough plants and still maintain, the scare of the federal guidelines. Sure. At over 99 plants is still very terrifying to us. It's almost a terroristic force holding a gun over your head. So we decided that if we could teach our members to grow, they wouldn't be afraid to maybe turn that spare bedroom into a place where they could grow the legal number of plants that they're allowed. And our reasoning was, if everybody grew, then everybody could take what they wanted out of theirs, bring it back to their collective, and then we could help patients that were members to get products at a cheaper price, because we would have more product and we wouldn't have to buy it from some guy in a duffel bag coming in the back door.
Yeah, more distributed, small-scale growing and collective sharing. Is that the kind of model you're proposing?
You got it right on the numbers. That's exactly right. Our first thought was we're going to grow it all here. But as the members grew, and now we have over 500 members at Clover, we realized that we weren't going to be able to do that. So when we talked to our members and we asked them, well, how come you don't grow your own? Why do you come here and why do you spend this money on this product when you can grow it yourself? And the answer that we found that was most prevalent was, well, I'm afraid I don't want to spend $1,000 on a light and equipment and then do it wrong. So what we reasoned was, well, what we're going to do at Clover is we brought in a grow master. We found somebody who is very, very proficient at growing, and we put him there, and we have a Come Grow With Us program. And what that entails is that you learn. We have an expert here. We post when he's going to be in town and when he's going to be here and when he's going to do things. And anybody who's a member who wants to come in and learn. And what we've found is that people watch the product go from beginning to end. We call it clones to cash. And it goes from beginning to end. And they're not afraid after that. They're not scared. They go, wow, this is pretty easy. This stuff grows like a weed.
Well, what's fantastic about that, too, is I'm a big fan of irony. And the irony here is that the federal government's whole idea is they want to clamp down on marijuana, make sure that there's no marijuana, get rid of marijuana. And yet by having these limits, like with the 100 plant limit where they'll get the major growers, all they're doing is encouraging this low level, small growing to be spread out among many people, which would be so much harder to contain and control. It's a delicious irony. I'm glad you're helping to
I have a question, though. Now, when the patient grows and then has product that they give back to the collective, does the patient get paid for the product that they give the collective?
Absolutely. Well, because our
it's sort of like the pyramid structure.
Yes, because our objective is to have lower prices on product. What we do is we encourage the members that grow to bring back the product that they're not going to use and to make it available, if you will, through the dispensary part to the other members. And yes, they're being generous. And your question is correct. Would this work if people were greedy? No, it wouldn't, because the person that would grow at home would bring it to the dispensary and try to pimp it off just like everybody else is doing. But if you have people that are compassionate and people that do understand that we could control the future of this. This is the Henry Ford opportunity of our lifetimes, okay? This is the very beginning of a Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson, if you will. And as long as we deal with this responsibly, and as long as I think we need to regulate ourselves. I think we need to stand to a higher moral standard, and I think we need to provide not only what the federal or what the local government is asking us, but we need to exceed that. We need to show them that we are not drug dealers. We are people who are compassionate.
That's excellent.
Yes, but that would be the perfect way to do it. But my argument is my thought is like, are people really able to pull that off?
They are.
That's the question.
I think it's possible. And if I can interject this, just from my experiences up here in Oregon, where we have a collective sort of agreement as well, it's not anywhere near as codified as what they have in California, but we have these cardholder meetings where people donate their excess, and then we spread it out to the people who need it. And we never have gone without. So I believe the compassion's out there. It just needs to be, as Redbeard's saying here, kind of advertised and exemplified and stood up for, so that people know that this is the way you're supposed to behave in medicine.
Yeah, and I can give you another example as to how that works. We have something in our collective called the Love Jar, and that's where we keep medication in a jar. It's not doled out by anybody. You don't have to come ask for it, but it's for people who are indigent or people who just can't afford it that day, or for whatever. You don't need a reason. All you need to do is to be a member. And we have found that when we first put the Love Jar out, we had people saying, oh, that'll be gone in a day. That won't even, people will just take it. You know that we had the Love Jar out for 2 weeks before we had to put anything more in it. And people understood that was for people who really needed it that couldn't afford it.
That's a beautiful thing. And I just want to I want to talk also, Redbeard, here about the security concerns that are so necessary in dealing with medical marijuana, and whether you've been a victim of any rip-offs or any raids or any problems up to this point.
No, my word. Yes, it's funny you mentioned that. Now it was a week ago, actually, that we took our turn in being the victim of a crime. And we got robbed. We had somebody come in. And, the great thing is that there is footage and the persons that were responsible. And I can't go into too many details.
Sure.
That the footage was there. The police came in. They acted responsibly. They didn't make us feel like we were drug dealers. They came in and they dealt with us just like somebody had come in and stolen cookies off the shelf at the farm at the local market. They were compassionate. They had many questions, so we felt that it was best to answer every question we could. It was a little weird walking around our collective with Van Nuys Police Department, and some of our members, they came in, and of course you've got security. You have to ring a bell, and the look on some of their faces when they came through the door, and there was the Van Nuys Police Department standing there. Some of those looks were priceless, I must say.
Sure.
But they treated us very well, and I'd love to say for anybody who's at all interested, the Van Nuys Police rock. They rock.
Well, that's good to hear. Terry, before we wrap things up, did you have any other questions for Redbeard or things you wanted to add?
I just think Redbeard's wonderful, and I really think that the reason why I wanted to have him on the show is that I think that he has some really good ideas on making the collectives work. I think that they're all so different, and some of them, we're still finding our way as to what a dispensary looks like. Sometimes you go in and you feel like you're doing something criminal. It's got a different essence to it. And I think that his collective and the direction that they're moving in is progressive and it's very conscious, and that's why I wanted to have him on the show.
Excellent.
Well, thanks, Terry. I appreciate that.
And Redbeard, do you have any websites or any other media appearances that you'd want to let people know about?
Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're getting ready to put out a whole line of funny T-shirts. I've got one right now that says, I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Yeah.
And underneath it says Barack Obama, 44th President of the United States. We're putting together some funny T-shirts, and you can find me at Clover Collective at 5658 Sepulveda here in Van Nuys. And after the burglary, I got to tell you, we need some compassion as well. We need people to keep using us. I know we got a few less strains than we used to because we had a lot stolen, but come on over, help us out. We'll help you out. It's a great program. And again, I appreciate you having me on here.
And no problem. Redbeard from Clover Collective, and of course, as always, Terry Joyce, our Southern California cannabis correspondent. Thank you both for joining us here on the Daily Audio Stash.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML. Have you heard about the new super pot that's supposedly 20 times more potent than your father's Woodstock weed? Don't believe the hype. Marijuana's THC potency has always varied, even in the 60s and 70s. And the drug czar's numbers are full of, well, exaggerations. While no intoxicant is harmless, cannabis is non-toxic and far safer than alcohol. No matter how much you smoke, of whatever potency, you cannot die of a marijuana overdose. Potency is irrelevant anyway. More potent pot just means you smoke less of it, meaning less harmful smoke in your lungs. This is a prime example of harm reduction in action. Besides, the government already allows the prescription of THC pills. Its commercial brand name is Marinol, and it's 100% potent. Meanwhile, the federal government won't allow dying people to use natural marijuana, no matter what the potency. Does this make sense to you? Learn the facts about pot. Visit NORML.org today.
The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music. The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling and refresh all you stashers for another day on the front lines of the drug war. Enjoy this cut from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com and visit our blog at stash.normal.org to learn how you can vote for your favorites and enter your Toker tunes in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards. Dr. Hook performs today's Rockin' Thursday song, the worldwide stoners anthem, I Got Stoned. Ray Sawyer, the spirited lead singer of the group, rocketed to international superstar status in the 70s, performing the hit song, Cover of the Rolling Stone. Ray developed a style of honesty and emotion. He sings with an intensity that truly moves an audience. A seasoned entertainer, Ray has accumulated 60 gold and platinum records and was included in the Alabama Music Hall of Fame in 2005. With an abundance of stage energy, sense of humor, unmistakable voice, and unique ability to reflect his good times in good music, Ray is definitely a song stylist of the first order. Find out more about the Dr. Hook legend at drhookraySawyer.com and myspace.com/Dr. Hook featuring Ray Sawyer. Enjoy today's song included in the 2007 Marijuana Music Awards, I Got Stoned by Dr. Hook.
I was sitting in my basement, I just rolled myself a taste of something green and gold and glorious to get me through the day. When my friend yelled through the transom, grab your coat and get your hat, son. There's a nut down on the corner, giving dollar bills away. You believe that? But I laid around a bit, then I had another hit, then I rolled myself a bomber, then I thought about my mama, then I looked around, played around, jacked around a while, and then I got stoned and I missed it. I got stoned and I missed it. I got stoned and it rolled right by. I got stoned and I missed it. I got stoned and I missed it. I got stoned. Oh me, oh my. Now it took 7 months of virgin. Oh, that's a long time. That local virgin with a sweet face up to my place to fool around a bit. The next day she woke up rosy and she cuddled up so cozy. When she asked me how I liked it, it hurt me to admit. Oh, I was stoned and I missed it. I was stoned and I missed it. I was stoned and it rolled right by. I was stoned and I missed it. I was stoned and I missed it. I was stoned. Oh me, oh my. About the many things I use just to sweeten my relationships and brighten up my day. Yes, but when my earthly race is over and I'm headed for the clover, when they ask me how my life has been, I guess I'll have to say I was stoned and I missed it. I was stoned and I missed it. I was stoned and it rolled right by. I was stoned and I missed it. I was stoned and I missed it. I was stoned. Oh me, oh my. Oh, all right, you're gonna have to stop that now. Hold it, everybody, wait a minute. Wait. Everybody's too loud. Bring it down. Everybody stop. It's over. Hey. No, it ain't either. Oh, man, that's good. No, it ain't over yet. Oh, man. No, I can't get the drummer to stop. Cut.
76% of Americans no longer support arresting and jailing marijuana smokers, and nearly as many support the medical patients having access to medical marijuana. And over 80% of our citizens now believe the war on drugs is an ineffective failure. So the question is, when will the government's misguided war on adult marijuana smokers finally end? When? Simple. When you and your like-minded friends, family, and coworkers get involved with an organization such as the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, also known as NORML. My name is Keith Stropp, and I founded the organization in 1970. Contact us at NORML toll-free 888-67-NORML or by visiting the organization's up-to-date webpage at www.normal.org.
Stasher Adam has been doing a stellar job keeping us informed on the progress of Senate Bill 5615 in Washington State as it makes its way through the halls of government in Olympia, Washington. This is the bill that would decriminalize the personal possession of up to 40 grams of marijuana, making it only a $100 civil fine, very similar to what passed in Massachusetts with 65% of the vote in the last election, and bringing Washington State somewhat in line with California and Oregon, which are both states that decriminalized the possession of marijuana. Now, this is from the vote and the hearing on Senate Bill 5615 in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's some amazing audio, especially the portion where the chair of Washington State's Senate Judiciary Committee outs himself as a former pot smoker. Rarely in these hearings do you get such open and honest debate on marijuana decriminalization. I've processed the audio just a little bit. I've taken out the long pauses in between when people are shuffling papers and such, but it does clock in at about 18 minutes here. But from someone who sat through quite a few of these hearings, this one is one not to be missed. Thank you, Stasher Adam, for pointing it out. This is from the Washington State Senate Judiciary Committee hearings on the decriminalization of marijuana.
Okay, going on to the next bill on the agenda. Okay, 5615, Senator Colwell's bill. Juliana, you want to take us through it?
This bill would decrease the penalties to a Class 2 civil infraction for persons over 18 who are found guilty of possession of 40 grams or less of marijuana or are found to have committed an infraction. And they must pay a $100 penalty. That's basically what it is.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hargrove.
Can you tell me how much 40 grams looks like, please?
I'm sorry, I don't have experience in that.
I think I can tell you how much it is.
Juliana, walk into that one, Juliana. The Fifth Amendment privilege not to testify in a way that would incriminate.
I think it's enough to probably get everybody in this room looped.
But it is 40 grams or under, so.
Yes, 40 grams is enough to get 8 or 9 adults in this.
Or under 40 grams, I apologize.
Raised to tell us.
Yeah. I have no idea.
Come on, Hargrove.
All seriousness, I think this is a bad one.
Okay. Why don't we have the bill before us, and then we can talk about it.
Mr. Chair, I would move that Senate Bill 5615 be given a due pass recommendation.
Okay, moved and seconded that Senate Bill 5615 be given a recommendation of due pass. Why don't we hear from the maker first?
Thank you, Senator Klein. Well, I think this really is a very reasonable measure for both economic reasons and for public safety reasons. And we've heard that Washington courts overall across the state have entered nearly 4,000 convictions, leading to over 16,000 days in jail in a yearly basis. And according to our own Washington State Institute for Public Policy, that is translated to, and this is important, Senator Hargrove, $7.6 million in taxpayer money in a year going to arrest, convictions, and incarcerations of adults for nonviolent offenses of simple possession of a small amount of marijuana. And the important thing for public safety, and I think the economic issues are rather evident in terms of what we're facing during this legislative session, but the money that could not be then spent by our law enforcement agencies, our police departments, our county sheriffs, our state patrol, and so forth, means that it's freeing up law enforcement to really focus on other crimes, other offenses that we all are very concerned about: domestic violence, robbery, armed robbery, burglaries, other violent offenses. And I'd like to just mention a couple of things very specifically here, and I think they really are very telling on why this bill is very important. I received a message from a city council member in Edmonds, and he told me in the message that he supports the bill and that in Edmonds alone, 15 to 20% of the arrests are for possession of small amounts of marijuana, which he related to me is a very large burden on their law enforcement, on their jails, and especially is the case when they are now facing cutting their budgets for law enforcement and public safety dramatically. So there is a public safety issue here that I think we can actually help protect the public more by reducing the amount of law enforcement, criminal justice efforts involving small amounts of possession of marijuana that is not doing harm to other people. The other issue I'd like to bring up here, or example, in 2003, the City of Seattle voters approved Initiative 75, which made marijuana possession the lowest law enforcement priority in the city. And the result has been clearly a drop in marijuana cases and prosecutions. The cases fell from 184 in 2000 to 125 in 2006, and importantly has saved law enforcement the resources they need again to use in fighting serious crime. It's what was brought out there that $66,000 less was spent on marijuana cases from just 2003 to the next year in 2004. And this is really the grabber here. The conclusion of a panel studying the impact found that, one, there was no increase in marijuana usage among young people in the city of Seattle in the years following voter approval of that initiative, no increase in crime, and no adverse effect on public health. So Senator Hargrove, in particular, with the measure that you sponsored in the Senate that was passed the last couple of days, I think that we're going to do a lot more in our spending money appropriately in fighting crime and promoting public safety by passing this measure.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Hargrove.
Well, first of all, over 70% of our CPS cases are drug and alcohol related, and marijuana is a significant piece of that too. Plus, there's a lot of data on marijuana being kind of a pathway drug. It's how people get started going on to more serious things like meth and other things like that. And it's just kind of interesting to me that, you know, we've set up and I've supported and promoted DOSA, reducing sentences and getting people into treatment. And I think by basically decriminalizing this, more than the jail time, it's kind of a message that we're on our way to this being okay. And, it's interesting, but I would just want to tell a little anecdote here because I went to college. If some people wouldn't realize that, I went to college.
Interesting.
I graduated from college. I don't know what that word meant that Juliana used, but they didn't, But it was really interesting because back in my fraternity, though I was not a partaker, there were several that did partake in marijuana. And 20 years later, one of my fraternity brothers I saw walking across the parking lot out here. And he had the same trench coat on as he had in college. He had the same hair as he had in college, except it was a little thinner on top. And he had smoked marijuana in college, and when I asked him what he was doing, he said, I'm taking a few classes at Evergreen, and I'm doing a little massage therapy on the side. The guy was in time warp. He was still in the same spot he was 20 years ago because he'd gotten into that particular drug of choice and never left it. And so I don't think any of us would advocate people using marijuana because of what happens to people that get into drugs and all of the side effects. What you're saying is that this isn't the most serious thing, but what I'm saying is that by legalizing it, we will basically, and it's not legalizing, it's an infraction, but by going that path, I think we'll encourage more people to go that way, and I don't think that's good for society, for our CPS cases, for people who drive under the influence, and for that matter, for cancer, because we're so worried about cigarette use and how people I believe it's way more carcinogenic than tobacco. And so why would we want to go that direction to kind of say it's a little bit more okay? And so that's my reason for opposition. We can respectfully disagree.
Mr. Caslin and I have my own comment.
My comment is talking about alcohol.
Bob, speak in the microphone.
Write this down.
when you talk about marijuana and alcoholism, I want you to remember the state of Washington is in the alcohol business. They're not in the marijuana business. So the state has nothing to complain about changing the law. So I'm going to support the bill.
I'd vote for prohibition too, Bob, so I'm consistent.
Well, I don't drink much anymore. Or any less.
Speaking on my own, I want to say this more seriously than jokingly, because I know it is said jokingly. Senator Hargrove, I recognize the kind of person that you recognized walking across the parking lot. Somebody who's in time warp, somebody who migrated toward the use of a drug, and for whatever reason, psychological, having to do with family, simply never got out of it. There is, anecdotally, a lot of evidence of that. I know some people like that, too. I think we probably all do. But the fact is, that's anecdotal rather than any kind of statistical or empirical evidence. Like you, I was in college. Like you, I got a degree, sort of. Had to work at it. And smoked, I don't mind saying this, and smoked a lot of dope, okay? And smoked until my probably 30s, early 30s, mid-30s, I forget. Soon after I was a dad, and I think being a dad, I kind of put it down. Enjoyed it. Don't feel in the slightest that it was a gateway drug to anything else. I joked about it the other day. I brew my own beer. Okay, I mean, that's not really the result of it having smoked dope, but all right. I, to this day, have been intoxicated, I think, probably the number of times I could count on the fingers of one hand, and always with my mountain climbing buddies who are kind of contagious that way, all right? It's not a gateway drug for everybody. I don't think it's a gateway drug at all, but that I don't have proof to the contrary either. What I do know from my own experience is that it is not addicting, and that's one reason to believe that it's not a gateway drug. It's something you might want when you have a moment, but it's not something you need, and there is a difference. And furthermore, I think Senator Colwell's initial point is the one that drives this home for me as a legislator. This is clogging our courts at a time when we were just talking about reallocating totally inadequate amount of public defense dollars between one form of local government and another. The prosecutors in my county are firing staff when they ought to be hiring staff, strictly for fiscal reasons. The courts are likely to be clogged with serious cases. We ought not to be clogging them with something that is a recreational and relatively harmless drug. I'm not saying fully harmless, but I think the harm of which is so minor compared to so many others. Let's prosecute those and leave jail beds and mental health hours for those people.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Hargrove, Senator Carroll, and Senator Roach.
Well, I appreciate the comments of everybody here. I really object to predicating everything based on simply the money. And every issue shouldn't be driven, and particularly not criminal justice issues, by what amount of money it's going to cost or how much we're going to save. There are things that are more important than simply the budget, and I think you would agree with at least part of that. I've got to look to places where they have wide open drug possession, such as Holland, to see the net effects upon society of doing that. And you can't go to Amsterdam, and fortunately I've not been there, to see some of the things, but certainly we know that one of the biggest dangers is stepping on needles and other things, just walking the streets there. To look at how it has de-raveled society, I think this is incredibly bad policy. And I also want to point out that it doesn't matter what we do here. It's sort of like jumping off the Narrows Bridge and denying gravity all the way to the water. Federal law says it is against the law to possess marijuana. And we can do whatever we want, and it does not negate the fact that the feds can come in at any time and arrest people for these charges. Whether they will or not is not the point. We are doing something contrary to federal law. And I just want to point that out as reasons why I think society-wise, fiscally-wise, this is not wise.
Senator Roach and Senator Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't see in the bill book the number of organizations that testified in opposition to this bill, but I do think I remember Tom McBride, who was here, and others from the law enforcement community. It is a gateway drug, and It is a drug that causes a lot of heartache in families, and especially when the youth are involved. It keeps people away from the studies that they should be doing. It keeps adults away from being as productive as they should be. It is a drug that is very dangerous for people who drive on the highway. You can a law enforcement officer can pull a person over suspected of drunk driving, and there are tests and breathalyzers, but there really is no way to determine whether or not somebody's been, having these drugs. So I'm going to be voting no, and I'm going to be pointing out to the public that this vote will be about 5-3, as I'm counting votes. 5-3, where it could be 4-4, and the bill could stay in the committee. This bill will go out of this committee where it could have stayed in committee and died, but it's going to be moving forward. And I guess I think that Republicans have generally been opposed to these bills because of the social implications and because we want to try to protect families. It is really a lot easier for parents if they can say this is illegal. It's the same reason that some parents need to have curfews. I don't support curfews, but some will say, gee, it's so much easier to keep our kids at home if they have to be home by 10 and that sort of thing. But these kinds of things, if we make it easier and less restrictive, only allow something to grow, it's not stagnant, it will hurt families. And I would hope that we would have a 4-4 vote with Senator Hargrove's help. That's what should come out of the committee.
Okay. Senator Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this legislation. I think we need to get much smarter on our war on crime. If there's ever been anything out there that has been a disaster at the federal level, it's been our war on crime. It's basically had no impact, and the negative ramifications have been huge. If you look at when it comes to marijuana usage, in the Netherlands, quite frankly, their usage is about half what it is here in the United States. It's about 2.5 to 3%. Most people would say here in the United States you're somewhere in the 4 to 5% or the 5 to 6% range. When it comes to a gateway drug, if we want to talk about a gateway drug, then we need to talk about alcohol, because if there's ever a gateway, then and we're not willing to make that discussion. So I don't think I don't think we need to make that differentiation.
We agree.
I don't know if there's another legislator in the Senate that their family's been more impacted by drugs than mine has. I lost my brother when he was buying $20 worth of drugs. He was killed. This is not about getting soft on crime. This is about getting smart on crime, and I think we need to move forward. Thank you.
Senator Klein, could I just have one final closing statement? Just a couple of reminders. The federal marijuana laws, Senator Roach, do not preempt or supersede state marijuana laws. Over 99% of law enforcement on marijuana is carried out by state and local authorities. Secondly, regarding gateway drugs, there has been no evidence that I've been able to find, nor authorities on this, that there's anything physiologically or biochemically related to making this a gateway drug. Rather, it's the legal status of marijuana that can lead to the use of harder drugs, people being associated with the illegal market. And that's where the potential problems are. And thirdly, this should be a public health issue. And in fact, I really like the provision in this bill that in civil to infractions, that monies will be deposited into the substance abuse treatment and treatment support services. This bill does not cover children, anyone under the age of 18. I think it makes common sense, and I urge your support of the bill.
Mr. Chair.
Senator McGowan.
Generally, in a committee, we all know how we're going to vote. This has been a bill that I have thought about for a long, long time. And have not been sure what I was going to do. And quite frankly, listening to all of the perspectives and debate here today, I think it's clear that this is a policy that you can certainly have a great deal of debate on. I have concerns about what kind of a message this sends to younger people, but I also recognize the experience in Holland is that this has not been the kind of thing that has created havoc in the community. And I think there's other policy looks that we have here. And so I am going to sign the bill out of committee so that it can have a wider debate among the full body.
Thank you. Okay, we have the bill properly before us, I believe. We do? I want to be sure we do, because I don't want to have any...
I believe I made the motion, but I'll make it again. Mr. Chair, I would move that Senate Bill 5615 be given a due pass recommendation.
Okay, moved and seconded, Senate Bill 5615 receive a recommendation at due pass. Sort of like President Obama taking the oath again. I just wanted to be sure.
You did it.
Okay, we've had, I think, enough debate. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The bill is passed.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with another reminder to turn your television on to the Fox News Channel tonight to see the Bill O'Reilly program and Marijuana Policy Project's Executive Director, Rob Campia, debating the legalization of marijuana. Should be fun to watch Papa Bear and Rob go at it. And for those of you waiting for another one of our cannabis quotes, this one's brought to you once again by the ever scholarly Mr. Spoff. This one's from Thomas Paine, the pamphleteer and author of Common Sense, 1776, who said, quote, "It is not a field of a few acres of ground, but a cause that we are defending. And whether we defeat the enemy in one battle or by degrees, the consequences will be the same." End quote. And we are the descendants of the original Minutemen, the original Patriots. Never forget that America's roots are hemp roots. Thanks for downloading the Audio Stash, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.